Welcome to our Urban Legends podcast. I'm Dr. Gloria McDaniel Hall. I've been a teacher, a principal, and assistant superintendent, all within urban schools in Chicago and around the country. Our Urban Legends podcast is a forum for sharing ideas, strategizing together, and supporting each other as we dismantle the deficit narratives sometimes associated with urban education and discuss where and how amazing work is being done. Good evening to all my guests, all my educators, all my urban school collective. I am excited today because I get to talk to two amazing school leaders who I met when I was working in Chicago Public Schools through AUSL. And I thought they knew each other, and they don't, but they both are just like so cool. So I'm glad that I have both of them on today to talk to us as new leaders, because new leaders have all of these like amazing ideas about what's possible, and they haven't gotten like jaded or given up like I have sometimes yet. But that's the whole purpose of Urban Legends, is like talking about the stories of the good stuff so that we can share that, so that people who are in urban schools right now can get some additional strategies and resources from people I know who are making it happen. So before we get started, why don't we start with you, Ms. Keviyona, and you tell us a little bit about your journey in urban education.
Good evening, everyone. I have been in education, urban education, for 18 years. This is my 18th year. I started out on the west side for half a year on the west side of Chicago. And I was like, even though I was born and raised on the west side, I was like, I'm not ready. So I still ended up in West Inglewood, teaching second grade. My principals quickly started to move me up, and I became a middle school teacher. They moved me out of the classroom, and I was a coach for 2 years, coaching my peers, which was another thing that I was like, yeah, maybe not. And so I kept running from the leadership calling. And I went to AUSL and became a mentor teacher, training teachers that are very successful right now. And then I left AUSL and went back to West Inglewood, to the school I am currently at, that I started at 18 years ago. And I have been an administrator for now. This is my 4th year. My leadership journey and my education journey did not start with wanting to be a principal. I've always wanted to be a teacher. I've always wanted to teach children to read in Chicago, because again, growing up on the west side of Chicago and seeing the struggles that so many of my friends and even my family went through, I always wanted to, I was like, I want to be the change that they see in the world. I want to make a difference. And so here I am.
So nice to have you. All right, Ms. Martiae.
So education was not my first choice. I actually ran from it. So throughout school, once my teachers would realize, that I was significantly like ahead of my peers, I found myself in that role situated as like the teacher's helper. And so you find yourself grading papers, tutoring kids during school, after school. Probably should have been on the payroll. And it had its privileges, but it didn't spark the torch for me to become an educator, although I appreciated the relationships that I built with them. What really sparked it for me was when I was graduating from college. I initially intended to go into higher education administration, and I just felt like, college opened up so many realms of possibility for me in terms of who you can be, things that you can immerse yourself into. But I was a corporate communication major. I minored in African American studies. And that just kind of fed my spirit, like the sheer tenacity, like of our like collective stories, reflecting on what that meant in terms of like the educational process for my own family. That led me to like, oh, this actually is where the impact is. Like, this is where you can take this up, not just thinking of yourself as an educator because they weren't paying teachers enough and still don't.
No, they don't.
As an act of social justice, because that was something that was deeply rooted for me. So as a social justice cause, I stepped in. That was 2007. And so here we are, 2022. And since that time, education, or rather, my role in education has taken on a lot of different hats. So I found myself both in community schools. I don't know if I noted, I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri, but actually didn't get a chance to teach there. I found myself starting my journey in special education in Atlanta, Georgia, and then eventually coming into Chicago, working both in charter and community schools. Found my way starting as a teacher and then eventually as a teacher leader, then going into coaching, academic director. Most recently, I was an associate director for the Chicago Teacher Residency. So still in that realm of coaching and training. And now I'm currently a resident principal with the Chicago Leadership Collaborative. So a little bit of everything, but it found its way to me and I'm glad it did.
The two of you have, like, the stories are amazing. And what I heard in both cases is that something that a teacher did, either giving you the opportunity to be her teacher's assistant or telling you that you could do more than you even thought you could. Like, we had a lot of success in school. It feels like the three of us did. But like, I'm going off script a little bit because it feels like when I go and visit the schools that I visit, what's missing, like what's a missing link, even though great things are happening, is children having those relationships with someone who's an adult who believes and gives them motivational messages about their potential. I see, like, we did this experiment once where we followed a child around just to see like what their day was like. And my feelings were hurt because I just wonder, like, if that was that teacher's child, what would they want their child's day to be like? And I don't think we see it like that. And so kids get lost, like, in the shuffle. Some kids, of course, the ones that are bright or the ones that are cute or the ones that are whatever, like, get the teacher's attention a lot of times. But then there's those other children who just don't and seem to get lost in the shuffle. I feel like those are the students who end up being the ones that have attendance issues, have behavior issues, have issues. So I'm gonna skip down to one of the bottom questions, and I want us all to talk about it. If it were a utopian school, like the school that everybody in here is gonna feel like they have the potential to do amazing things like you two have done, what does that school look like? Like, what can we do? Like, we should start our own school, but what could we do in that school? Because number one, I feel like one social worker, and I don't even like, social worker isn't even like the term, because a lot of times they end up doing paperwork all day. But what does the emotional and psychological support for students look like in school, in that utopian school that we're developing? What do the arts look like in that school that we're developing? What do the other extracurriculars look like? What does my individualized plan look like in that school? So, okay, I just had to give you a little build up since I went off script, but what are you thinking?
For me, when I think about my utopian school, it's first that children have to feel safe, and it has to be a place where they want to come. And what I mean by that is there are, like you said, some adults in the building that they trust and that they look up to, and that it's a home away from home, and it's a place where adults start over every day. Like, we know that we're going to have some spicy girls and
There we are.
some boys that are too grown, but how do we start over every day to know that they need a champion, right? Also, for me, it's having, and I wrote that down earlier, that the arts must live, because some of my students that have been counted out, when they go to art, when they perform in the talent show, when they play sports, when they perform in musicals or plays, my goodness.
Yes.
Like, you're like, oh, you gonna be the millionaire. You my ticket. And I don't even
Yes.
know it.
Yes.
And then I'm gonna be quiet. But then also, not just for the students being able to come in, but also for the parents, because we know that the parents need something. So to have some type of programs or resource center for the program, I mean, for the parents and for the adults in the building, so that they can grow and feel value as well.
I definitely agree with Keviyona. I think that there's three aspects. When I was reflecting on this earlier, there's three aspects. One is for sure that piece around self-expression. I think that there is also space for affirmed identity. And then there has to be partnership. You know, when I think back over 30 some odd years ago, when I was in elementary school, long before there was a term of community schools, that's exactly what we had. We had to be responsive to what were the needs of the community and how do we bridge those gaps in order to meet the needs of students. It couldn't just be rooted in their academic identity. And so I think we have to have spaces where we expand the idea of what we're actually working toward and be able to provide both the resources and to create a communal vision of what it is that we're working for. You don't get to come from the outside and tell me what I need to prioritize in my community. I need to ask you, what is it that you are looking to build, and how can I support that vision by supporting your student, and what resources and partnerships can I seek out to make sure that that vision is fulfilled?
Yes. So when I was principal in West Inglewood, one of the people or groups that we partnered with was the Communities and Schools of Chicago, I think is the name of it. And so they don't select every school to partner with, right? You got to show that you've already been doing some attempts at partnership, and that you kind of have your stuff organized in terms of that. And so they saw what we had been trying to do to engage parents, what we had been trying to do with our students, and they took us on as a partner. The other thing that they did that I really appreciated is they just didn't give us any programs that they offered. They found out from like student surveys and parent surveys what people wanted to do. And then I look up and we have students getting eyeglasses. Didn't even know there were 85 students in the building who needed eyeglasses. So we were thinking they had reading disability and they couldn't see, like, and there was no knowledge of that. So it feels like there has to be a health component, the safety component, the arts component. We had students doing ballroom dancing in West Inglewood. Like you never would have thought. Like there's just, when students can express themselves in those various ways, like the behaviors, like just because they wanted to participate in stuff. Like it wasn't, I think that the behaviors were, before I got there, were a reflection of the fact that people thought like they felt like they just didn't belong and nothing was like calling at them. And once we found out, the school newspaper, we had half the people who were discipline problems on the school newspaper, and they walk around the school interviewing people, and we haven't heard another peep out of them after that. And so it's like finding the thing, which I think is like right now, after the pandemic, we're coming back and we're trying to go back to doing school exactly like we did it. Like we need to incorporate some of these additional ideas. Students' social skills lacked during those 2 years where we were out. So like, without naming names or being specific, like what are some of the good things that you're currently working on that kind of align with this whole idea of meeting people where they are?
I think for us, I think what you mentioned before, like that sense of belonging, I think that that's incredibly important. And I think specifically in urban education, you know, to just name a thing, there's a wide variety and population of students that we serve. And specifically in Chicago, the majority of students that are in the public school system are Black and Brown. And when we name that, we have to also look at the fact that those communities, although not a monolith, definitely is collectivistic in nature. And so we can't approach it with these individualistic ideas. So how am I intentionally building a sense of community? Am I having, things as simple as morning meeting, right? Am I building in those opportunities for people to be seen? Does my teaching staff reflect the population of my students? Am I hiring and retaining and keeping the climates that are going to be conducive to them being able to be affirmed? So I think there definitely is a place to start there.
So for me, some things that we're doing at my school right now, I agree with you, Martiae, that my community is all Black and brown students, and my brown babies, the population is picking up every day. So now the hiring that we've been doing, we're making sure that they also have adults in the building that look like them. My fifth grade teacher is starting a morning program for my Latino babies so that they can come and have a safe space for each other. We have, like, we're a restorative practice school. So we have circles, and we have morning circles, and we have restorative practice circles. We have teams of people that meet with students. We have Becoming a Man, BAM, where a guy comes in and he's there almost every day, and he meets with our boys and he teaches them how to be men and teach them how to cope. We are working a lot around these social skills and teaching students the importance of technology and how it hurts you and how it never goes away. I've been working with the teachers because, of course, we know they're tired and frustrated too. And so I've been working with the teachers to teach them strategies around rebuilding relationships with students. No, you can't be tired. We have 15 more weeks left. You can be tired, but you can't be tired of the kid. Like, you can be tired. I respect that, but you can't be done with the 12-year-old.
Yeah.
So, so I check in with the adults. And so another thing for my students, my principal started a dance team for the girls as a mentoring program. We just make sure that we're starting to put that J factor back in school. Because that's the part when school started at the beginning of this year, I was like, it's not even fun to me. And we want them to come in, they already have to be 3 feet, 6 feet, whatever the footage is for the week. They have to be that far apart so they can't collaborate how they usually would collaborate. And we're teaching them like it's 1982.
Yes. It hasn't changed.
No. So how do we get some joy and some collaboration and make students go back to owning and goal setting and wanting to be here and having a voice? So we've sent out surveys to ask students what they want to do. What do you want to see in this school? So that's where we are right now.
Cool. So you both alluded to teachers, and I saw a study recently that estimated that between now and the next couple years, 40% of school leaders indicate that they're leaving this profession. A lot of people are seeking to go to district, they're seeking to do consulting, all kinds of other things, anything other than being in a building. When you see that kind of mass exodus, is saying something about what is and isn't happening in buildings. If 40% of the leaders are leaving, I can't even imagine what the percentage is estimated for teachers. And so my whole thing forever, I wrote my dissertation about retaining urban teachers on purpose. So I talk to teachers to find out what it is they feel they need to stay and thrive. And it was an answer that I never suspected, which was the whole social feeling safe and feeling socially accepted in the school building, because then they feel like anything is possible. That was like the bottom line, is the places where people felt safe was the places that they stayed. And so, like, I don't know what the attrition level of teachers is like in your building, but like, are there things specifically that you would suggest, other than some of the things we've talked about, that or maybe in addition to those, that people could be doing in their buildings to really make teachers feel their value, because they are like the most important component in this whole thing, so that you keep your teachers. What, like, if we could design that utopian support for teachers in the schools where you work, what would be some of the things that we'd have in that plan?
One thing that I realized is it's not just about like buying food or doing things
Please.
like that. It's actually, and just like with students. So for my teachers where I am right now, and I am going to send out the languages of appreciation quiz to, and it's like the five
Love
love
languages.
languages
Right.
for the workplace,
Right.
to see exactly what do they need. The other thing is, like, I know for my team meetings last week, before we even started, because teachers don't like coming to team meetings, I had everyone give one of their colleagues a compliment. And oh my goodness, we had tears, we had people smiling, like you don't even know how I needed that because I didn't feel impactful. Quality time, like actually sitting and listening to them. Now they'll take all your time because they like to talk, but making sure that I'm that ear for them and they know that I care about them if they're absent. Another thing that I know that we're starting to start back up is I had a teacher come to me about a book club that that she wants to read the 4 agreements. I said, great, I just finished reading it. So it's like we need community. So they need to feel, so right now where we are, because now our attendance is increasing again with our teachers because their attendance was worse than the students. But just knowing that, okay, I may come to your room and say, do you need to go to the bathroom or do you need to step out? And sitting there for 15 or 20 minutes go way farther than spending hundreds of dollars.
Oh yeah. And the thing is, principals get a false positive when people eat the food, like, because people gonna eat food if you bring
eat
the
those
pizza
chicken wings and go talk about you. Yes,
got to eat
with a wing, with a wing in their
then you
hand.
mad when your
in their
comes
hand.
back and it
Yes,
says
ma'am.
something different. You said, but you ate my chicken wing.
Yes.
Okay, so Martiae, what do you think?
I think that this is, just like with everything, it's layered, right? But it really is rooted in relationship. And I think one of the pieces of that relationship, like management component, is making sure that it's people first and that you protect your people from all of these like extraneous initiatives that come down on them. How do you help to prioritize what actually is a priority so that your team can just focus on those things? And how are you consistently checking in around their feelings about those things? And I think that often as school leaders, there's so many things that come at us as not an initiative, but an actual mandate, that it's easy to pass off the energy around that thing without considering the impact, right? And I think that as leaders, we have to take a step back to say, what's the capacity of my team right now, right? What are the additional things that they are also balancing? And if you can't answer that question, you need to schedule some check-in. Right? And I think that the more that we hold a sense of self-regard and we model that within ourselves, I think it opens us up to be better leaders and better managers of people, to also be able to hone in to what their actual needs are and just create space for them to voice it, because no one's a mind reader. But when you create that space, that open door policy, that people actually can come in and have those conversations, I think that does facilitate relationship, which then also leads to retention in some cases. And honestly, even more important, might also lead to people coming to the realization that it is time for them to move on, but at a no fault space where you can bring in somebody else who can sustain the work.
Yes. So our podcast is all about changing the narrative. And I know that we've all worked in some schools that have had difficult situations. I also know that I think it was Martiae. Were you at Johnson?
I
One
was
of
at
you all was
Johnson.
at Johnson.
I was.
And I saw Johnson one year, I saw Johnson another year, and it was a completely different, it was a completely different place. And it was staffed with a whole bunch of new teachers. Somehow, though, it was running like a well-oiled machine. Students also seemed happy. It wasn't like the well-oiled machine that's like completely silent. Like it wasn't that. It was a happy place, and students were learning, and teachers were thriving, and there were these grade level meetings and subject matter meetings, and people were getting together and sharing. I'm like, what happened in here? So that's the message that I kind of want to like share with people. Like there is a possibility that we can get this right. If you were to give a message to people about how, even though we've been talking about it the whole time, but how to overcome some of the difficulties that they face and not give up, because our kids need us not to give up. Our parents need us not to give up. Our communities need us not to give up. What would be your motivational message about not giving up? Because we need people, like we need you.
So I'm gonna push back a little bit, Doc.
Okay, do it. Let's go.
Push back. And in that pushback, it's not to say that we aren't needed, right? Because we are. But I think that my advice really is rooted in people being able to check in with themselves.
Yes.
To see where their capacity is.
Yes.
And to see where their talents are best fit.
Yes.
And the reason being, specifically in urban education, and it may happen in other spaces, but I can only speak to my experience, we find ourselves at times as martyrs, where we will give all and everything into the work.
Yes.
And find that our lives potentially are at an imbalance, which then leads to burnout, which means then I can't be of service to anybody. So I think the first step is for people to be able to check in with themselves. And then the second piece then is when you do that check-in, if you find that there's some type of support that is needed, reach out, because you cannot do this work alone. You need relationships and collaboration in order for you to not just sustain yourself, but the solutions inherently are going to be collaborative, in nature. And so you should not lean in just to your own understanding and your own experiences, but it really should be like a collective approach.
Amazing. That wasn't a hard pushback. Thank you.
So that was good, actually.
That was good. That was really good.
I'm like, so for me, as you were speaking, Martiae, I really thought about also people going back to their why. Why did you choose this work from the beginning? Because sometimes, like you said, when we get lost in the work and we get burned out and we're stressed out and we're tired and we're over it and we're trying to find other things to do, we forget what was most important or why we fell in love with this work in the first place. Another thing that I've realized over this 2 years, that adult SEL cannot just be a buzzword, that you must take care of yourself and your family. And so, from training from 18 years ago, you would stay at school till 8 o'clock at night.
Oh yeah.
And you would get home beat down and don't have time for your family. It is not okay for you to be beat down and have nothing left for yourself. So I tell teachers, and the teachers have had to tell me, and my leadership coaches have had to tell me, it's okay for you to take time for yourself. It's okay for sometimes for you to cut it off and leave the work on the desk, because trust me, tomorrow, even if you clear that desk off,
it's going
to be some more work.
Yes.
Knowing that, like you said, knowing when you're not your best self and being okay and admitting it and saying that I'm not okay. It's taken me this many years to sometimes say, wait a minute, I'm not okay. I have to take a minute because this is all I want to do.
Mhm.
All I want to do is education. And I don't want my fire to burn out because I'm not taking time for myself. So the things that I think about again is the why, remembering your why and making sure that you take care of yourself. Because then you can be your best self. Then you can have that utopian school. Then you can have those relationships, which are key to having a successful school. So
Cool. Thank you. Okay. So the last question, what I always do is I call it like calling on the OGs. Like, so today's OG is Ida B. Wells. And her quote that I saw when I was looking up some of the information about her is, the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. So how does this work? Do you think? How does this work apply, that quote apply to our work?
for me, the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. What instantly popped in my head was, we have to stop sweeping inequitable practices in education under the rug.
Yes.
We have to stop acting like a lesson plan or a curriculum or this thing is going to fix it, and actually fix the people that are causing the inequitable problems.
Yes. Yes. And to think that we've been doing it this whole time, and the same opportunity gap or achievement opportunity or whatever, I don't like to use those negative words. It's worse. The gap is worsened than it was when I was teaching, and that's not
It
cool.
is.
That's
It
not
is.
cool. And so, like, there's something that's amiss with the system. It has to be bigger than just what we do every day in a classroom. It's a system issue. And yeah, what do you think, Martiae?
I think the idea around like righting wrongs, I think that really depends on who the narrator is, like who's telling that story. And I think that we have to be really critical around where these stories come from and what they're rooted in. I think the truth piece is we have to illuminate that, you know, there's so many things that we face, specifically in urban education, or just navigating the world in these bodies, that is systemic. And I think that when we look at it from that particular lens, then we're better able to identify the principle behind what we're navigating, as opposed to just looking at the face that it has taken on for that day.
Yes.
And so within that, you know, I'm a meet Ida with Tony.
Okay, let's do that. Let's do it.
Tony Morrison. Meet Ida with Tony, because Tony Morrison said the function of racism is distraction, right?
Yes.
And in that, it's like, you know, someone tells you you have a peanut-sized brain, so you then go and spend 20 years trying to prove that no, we do not. And so my urge is that in the shining the light on the truth is that we, instead of trying to disprove things that we inherently know are not true, that we charge ourselves and empower our children to shine the light on the truth of who they are and to walk in that vein, to completely disregard whatever these naysayers or outside narratives and stories are, so that they can go forward in the truth of who they are, so that they can self-actualize according to something that's inherent to them, right? Something that no one else can really tap into. And I think that that's the space that will shine above anything else in terms of like righting the wrongs, because the wrongs are coming from outside of us anyway.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. Well, thank you, ladies, so much. I knew this was going to be good. I just didn't know it was going to be this good. But thank you so very much for being my guest tonight. And I just feel like I've been in line. I need to go pick up all those books we talked about. I got the 4 agreements in there and haven't finished reading it. So I'm going to pick that up tonight. But thank you two so very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.